Chapter 5. Can I call you Mommy? Mommy. She said it, and I knew. She was mine. I was captivated, because Mommy is forever. It's such a powerful name. Mommy means I trust you. Mommy means you will protect me. Mommy is for shouting when you need someone dependable, for laughing with when you are excited. Mommy is for crying on and cuddling with when you are sad, or giggling and hiding behind you when you are embarrassed. Mommy is the fixer of boo-boos and the mender of broken hearts. Mommy is a comfort place, a safe place. Mommy means you are mine, and I am yours, and we are family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Today, someone calls me Mommy several hundred times a day, but I remember vividly the first time I heard the word uttered in relation to me. The person who called me Mommy for the first time is now my daughter, Scovia, and though I didn't expect that I would be her mother when we met, I can't imagine life without her. I met her through a tragedy that happened at her house when the entire structure fell on her sister Agnes. At 9 years old, Agnes had become the primary caregiver of her sisters, 7-year-old Mary and 5-year-old Scovia. Their father had died of AIDS, and their mother had long since disappeared. Their grandmother, who lived nearby, helped with what little she had, but often her own food was barely enough for her own self. Days consisted of digging in the fields for a little something to eat, and walking miles to and from the nearest well with large plastic jugs to collect the day's water. Mary kept a neighbor's baby, and in return was provided with some food for herself. Even little Scovia went to dig for hours in the field to find food, help fetch water, wash clothes, and cook supper when Agnes had to stay late in the garden. Like all little girls, her heart held hopes and dreams of the future, but the hardships of everyday life kept them focused on one day, one experience, one moment at a time. One night, as lightning cracked throughout the sky and the hard rain danced on the tin roof, the girl's smallest house, made of sun-baked mud bricks, collapsed, crushing Agnes under the wall of sharp pieces of brick. A neighbor rushed her to the hospital, where they put her in a bed and forgot about her. Talk of the girl who had been under the wall circulated through the community the next morning, and Oliver insisted that we go see her. I couldn't see a reason not to visit her. She would certainly use some prayer. We arrived at the hospital and found Agnes, in and out of consciousness, but still smiling bright enough to light up even the gloomiest hospitals in all of Uganda. No one had attempted to help her yet, not even to give her a painkiller. When I asked the head nurse why, she explained that she could not treat a patient unless she knew who would pay for the treatment. Since Agnes had no real caretaker, the nurse assumed her treatment would not be paid for, so the hospital simply didn't treat her. This is not unusual in Uganda, where the hospital admission process is as easy as walking into a hospital and climbing into an empty bed. Those who can pay for medical attention receive it. Those who can't simply lie in a bed. In addition, many hospitals don't provide food for patients. This was the case in the hospital where Agnes was, so someone also needed to make sure she had something to eat. I knew I could provide healthy meals for Agnes, and I also knew I could find the money to pay for whatever treatment she needed. I quickly told the nurse I would cover the cost of treating her, if only this child could get some relief. I had no idea that this commitment of $20 would turn into the commitment of a lifetime, full of love and growth and joy and tears, homework and goodnight kisses, and more laughter than anyone can imagine. As we headed home that day, I asked Oliver about Agnes's two sisters. She agreed we should go check on them, and upon finding them at home alone, I offered to take them to my place for lunch, which turned into dinner, which turned into bath time, which turned into a sleepover. I asked Oliver to tell their neighbors and grandmother that the girls would be staying at my place until their sister was released from the hospital, and we had come up with a better place for them to go. The physical resemblance between Maria and Scovia is strong. Most people could quickly identify them as biological sisters. They were both shy at first. Scovia is joyful and obedient. She has a look of happy mischief in her eyes, even when she isn't being mischievous. When she laughs, which is often, she laughs from the most inner part of her being, from deep in her soul, and the laugh overtakes her whole body, making it impossible for anyone in the vicinity not to laugh along with her. She likes to jump and play, and she has energy to spare. Even though she's still a child, something about her causes observers to realize she's had experience in life. Mary is more reserved, but that doesn't mean she isn't always thinking or observing people and situations through her big, gorgeous brown eyes. In her delightful way, she's perspective, wise beyond her years. She's focused and quite serious for her age, but still loves to dance, joke, and play with her sisters. She is understanding and quick to forgive. Mary has a generous, gentle spirit with a grateful heart and a deep love for God and the people around her. Both Scovia and Mary have hearts full of compassion, always desiring to help those around them. The three of us, Mary, Scovia, and I, became fast friends as I took them on their first motorcycle rides, gave them their first ice cream cones. The discovery of the bathtub, complete with running water, was almost more than they could handle. They must have bathed 40 times that first week. We could hardly understand one another, seeing as I had learned only a limited Luganda, and they spoke almost no English. But still, we were having way too much fun. Meanwhile, we were spending a great deal of time at the hospital with Agnes, taking her meals and praying with her and leaving her in Oliver's care when we could not be by her side. A week later, she was discharged with a diagnosis of a broken collarbone and extensive soft tissue damage, which was excruciatingly painful and made walking difficult. She moved in with the three of us. I quickly discovered that Agnes is a born leader. She can befriend just about anyone. She is outgoing and engaging, and she has a trustworthy quality about her. She is often ready to laugh, but has a serious side that enables her to see things as they are. She is mature for her age. She knows right from wrong and is quick to set people straight. She is set in her convictions, knows what she wants, and will not easily let anyone tell her she can't have it. I was not accustomed to having such a strong personality in the house, but I was delighted. I looked around for places these precious girls could go, but found nothing satisfactory. Slowly but surely, we were becoming a family, and I would have only the very best for family. They had no living relatives capable of taking care of them. An orphanage was out of the question, in my opinion. The only option would be adoption for a family or by me. Knowing that adoption would entail, I thought trying to accomplish it would be crazy. I found myself desperately praying that God would show me what to do, and that is when it happened. Shy 5-year-old Scovia tiptoed into my room, watched me curiously for nearly 10 minutes without saying a word, and then, As though she had been pondering the question for ages, she asked, "Can I call you Mommy?" And absolutely no one would ever have been able to say no to those big brown eyes. We were a family. The answer flipped up my heart, and then my whole self spilled out of my mouth as naturally as if it had always known. Yes, I am your mommy. In researching and talking to various government officials, I discovered that one must be 25 to finalize an adoption in Uganda. The child has to be fostered for 3 years in Uganda before an adoption can be made final. Believing that we had exhausted all other options, and this is what God was asking of me, and knowing that I was willing to commit my whole life to these children, I began the process to foster them, and later, the longer paperwork process of legal guardianship. My year-long commitment to Uganda had turned into a lifetime commitment, but I believed that the Lord was confirming that these were the next steps He wanted me to take. So I eagerly began the process that would one day lead me to finalize the adoption of my new children. I was Scovia's mommy, and Agnes's, and Mary's. We had only just begun the daunting process of paperwork to make it legal. Being visited by local chairmen and government child welfare officers and signing mountains of documents, but the relationship was forged in our hearts long before we got our stamped foster papers back from the courts. We adjusted quickly to this new life together, and in no time it seemed that we had been family for ages. A few months later, I became mommy to two more beautiful, amazing girls. As biological sisters, 12-year-old Prosy and 9-year-old Margaret had each other as family, but they needed more. They needed a stable home where they would be well loved. Originally, I thought once again we would love on these sweet girls until I found somewhere better for them to go. But we all fell in love, and Agnes begged that we make them part of our family forever. How could I argue with a little girl who knew what it was to not have a loving home and who wanted to share hers with others? Prosy and Margaret are tall and thin, appearing to be closer in age than the 2.5-year-olds that separated them. Prosy is sweet and quiet, respectful towards people, and deeply reverent towards God. She loves to learn and applies herself diligently to her schoolwork and her study of God's Word. She is a young woman of prayer, an individual of integrity, and a person of great promise. Prosy is a lover. Never in my life have I met a more sensitive or generous child or adult. Prosy truly grieves for those who grieve and rejoices when those around her rejoice. The simplest pleasure delights her, and just the thought of someone sad, hungry, or lonely deeply hurts her tender heart. Prosy is intuitive and uses this gift to try very hard to always please her family and her Heavenly Father. Margaret is simply hilarious and wonderful. Joy just radiates from her. Margaret was quiet and timid at first, but is anything but shy today. Margaret is spontaneous and outgoing. She has a wonderful sense of humor and a beautiful, kind heart. One can never quite tell what Margaret is plotting behind her sparkling eyes. Her desire to help others laugh makes her likely to play jokes on people, but in the most good-natured way. Margaret is a wonderful listener. She makes people feel cherished and important. Everyone wants to be her friend. She is curious, inquisitive, wanting to understand the world around her and the people in it. She has big dreams for her life, and I have no doubt she will fulfill them. As I thought about these girls, so different as individuals, but all so full of life and potential, who had moved into the house in the village with Christine and me. I could hardly believe it. Just months earlier, I had wondered what I would possibly do with my big house. I never doubted that it was the exact place God wanted me to be. It seemed enormous, but in less than a year, our home was filled with 5 precious girls. God had given this home a family, and with these precious souls around me, I knew that He had given me a home. We relished getting to know one another and learning the ups and downs of this new family. It was incredibly challenging and beautifully wonderful, all at the same time. Anyone who has ever added a person to the family knows that each new individual brings new responsibilities and dynamics. With fostering and adoption, especially in the case of older children, there are even more challenges. My children call me mommy, and I so long to be their mommy. But building a relationship takes time, and going from being just a caregiver to mom makes a significant period of bonding and trust building. I wrestled with God as I thought about the hurt my children had to experience in order to become part of my family. I had no idea what it felt like to be a 9-year old with the responsibility of looking after my younger sisters. I couldn't imagine watching my father die and then having my mother run away, too afraid to carry the burden of my life on her own. I had no idea what it felt like to spend the first 12 years of life without knowing a parent who would ever cover me in love. I grieve these things for my children, and I always will. I fully trust that this is the way that God intended for their lives to unfold, and that He is working all these things for their good. But there is still real pain in my heart when I think about all they have had to endure. With each child, the pain and trauma manifested themselves in different ways and through different behaviors. I spent more time in prayer than I ever had in my life, begging God to teach me how to be a good enough mother to these priceless gifts, asking Him to guide me as I blindly dove into this blessing called adoption. Physically, I was exhausted. I laughed to remember that I thought that I had been tired before. I was thankful to have Christine to help me with the laundry and simply learning to cook meals for more than one person was taking longer than I ever dreamed it would. I was waking up in the middle of the night to soothe someone who had a bad dream, double and triple checking that everyone had taken their medication, brushed their teeth, and put on clean underwear. I was waking up 2 hours earlier to cook real breakfast and make sure we all got to school on time. By God's grace, even in the hard moments, I knew that the job of being a mother was what God had created my heart for. We had our struggles, but at the end of the day, we were each in love with this new thing we called family, in this new place we called home. I knew that God had brought me to Uganda, not just to change my heart for Him and for the poor, but to make me mommy. I am mommy when I gather the girls into a large circle for family meetings, and when I watch them all run and play in the local swimming pool or picnic beside the Nile River. I am mommy when several voices join together at the dinner table and say, "Thank you, Mommy, for food." They aren't always the same 14 voices, but almost invariably several girls will express their gratitude at every meal. And when they get excited because Friday night is movie night, they want to watch The Sound of Music one more time. Here in my home, I am not a missionary or an aid worker. I'm just a mom. I'm like most other mommies, wholeheartedly dedicated and devoted to the children God has given me. I get tired and frustrated at times because I'm human, but I relish my life because it's God's plan, and I can't imagine anything better. My 14 beautiful girls call me Mommy. 400 children in the community where I live who have lost their mothers to starvation or disease or something else equally unimaginable, call me mommy. Because so many children are constantly shouting this word, even a lot of adults in the villages around our home call me mommy. Mommy to many, they say. Dignified men, store clerks, parking attendants, yep, they call me mommy. Teachers and the doctors at the local hospitals call me mommy. I hear it in shouts as I drive down these insanely bumpy roads. It is sung at my daughter's burst through the door when she gets home. It is whispered in my ear as I wake up each morning. It is hollered with joy or sobbed with a longing for comfort. And every time I hear it, my heart leaps. I am willing to bet this is how our Heavenly Father feels each time we whisper His name. Each time we shout with joy or cry out in pain. Every time we tell Him exactly what we need or feel. Father, I trust you. Father, you will protect me. You are my comfort place, my safe place. You are mine, and I am yours, and we are family. His heart leaps, and He delights in us, and this is unfathomable. Journal entry, Tuesday, February 19th, 2008. It is a house of many cultures, many languages, and many colors. It is a house of laughter and tears and sometimes frustration, but mostly elation. It is a house of praise and worship and thanks. It is a house that is usually teeming with children, laughing and dancing and singing and just being kids. Something many of them have never had a real opportunity to do. It's always a loud house, and it's always a grateful house. It's my house. But mostly, it is God's house. When I began renting this house last October, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. All I knew was that if the Lord had given me a house, it can't be just for me. I knew that whatever I did, it was to be used this house for the glory of God. Well, once again, His plan for me and for my house is greater than anything I could have ever imagined or asked for. My house has become a safe place not just for me, but for hundreds of others. Children are here for lunch and dinner daily. They sing and play soccer in the front yard, color pictures, do homework at the kitchen table, and make huge soapy puddles in the bathtub, and their enthusiasm for bathing. They delight in the simple things, like when I shave their heads to treat their ringworm, or rub their feet with paraffin to draw out the burrowing jiggers. They soak up the Bible stories I read them like little sponges, never stop asking for more. They laugh hysterically when I cuddle them or kiss their foreheads. And it hurts my heart a bit that they find the fact that someone loves them so funny. And that is the blessing God has given me in this house. I get to provide a home for children who are homeless, a safe haven for children who feel threatened, lost, and unwanted. Most of all, I get to love children who don't know love otherwise. I get to accept them for who they are. I get to present them with my love and then teach them of the Father's extravagant love. The house full of termites and bats, the house that has taken more hours and shillings to repair than I ever could have imagined. The house I have fixed and painted and scrubbed for hours and days and weeks. The house I have sweated and cried over in desperation. This house has become a home, not just to me, but to hundreds. It holds my heart. It holds so many lessons. It is a place where children can be children, where people can know that they are important, special, and loved. It is a place where people accept Christ and learn about Him and grow in Him. It is my house, but mostly it is a house of the Lord.